I actually like this movie more than the first one. The opening scene is pretty instantly iconic. We carry off of Joel's character from the first movie. And, he's clearly messed up. He's clearly been hallucinating a lot. Yeah, he's still handling it pretty well. And he decides, oh, he saw these two people and he'd be studying them because he was a cop. He was able to find out these two guys they're pieces of shit. So he wants to traumatize the other one and pass the virus on to him so he doesn't feel bad. Um, Kind of a weird plan. I can kind of see why he did that, but at the same time, you can't control who that guy ends up traumatizing, right? I guess he didn't want to think about that though. Because, like, who is he going to end up traumatizing? Uh, but it's whatever. Um, he's able to pass it on. But in the accident, of course, the guy pulls a gun on him. He doesn't take his gun, which is so stupid. You're a cop. Why aren't you acting smarter than this? Because he kidnaps the guy, well, holds him hostage or whatever, when he came back from getting some drinks. And he's holding him at knife point. When he goes in, the brother tries to pick up a gun, but he says, hey, if you pick up the gun, I'm going to shoot him. But he doesn't tell him to give him the gun or something. He's not like, slide the gun over to me, like in most fucking movies. He doesn't do that. They could have had a reveal that the guy had another gun and he pulls it out when he stabs his brother. But no, he just, as a cop, doesn't take a bad guy's weapon. How stupid are you? So, a guy they're selling drugs to, Lewis, who is in the horror movie Companion, that he did pretty good in that movie, and he does pretty good in here, though he doesn't get to do that much here, ends up getting traumatized now. And some of the bad guy's buddies show up and they start shooting at him, and he's trying to run and he gets hit by a car. And they have some kind of like NPC dialogue, like that I feel like you would hear in a video game if you died when you weren't supposed to. Like, if you died to a villain in, I don't know, I guess Arkham Knight, just a random thug, they have some dialogue saying, well, that takes care of that, or something like that. It's so fucking corny. Really good opening scene, though, really tense, really makes you feel bad for Joel, especially since we had already knew him from the first movie. But just feels a little bit lazy with him not asking for the gun. They should have thought about that part, at least. He's a cop. He should have been smarter than that. Um, so now Lewis is infected, but he's not the main character. We're not following him. We're following a woman named Sky Riley. She is a singer who has been traumatized after the death of a toxic, I believe, boyfriend, though I don't believe they ever say that. They call him a fellow actor, stuff like that. His name's Paul Hudson. He's played by Jack Nicholson's kid. And he's pretty good. He looks pretty creepy. We don't get to see that much of him. But after a car crash, she got hurt and he died in it. So she's dealing with some trauma. She took a step away from the acting business for a little bit, well, music business for a little bit. And from the accident, she needs a drug called Vitacaine, I believe is what it was called, and that's what she uses to deal with her back pain. And Lewis has it. She knows Lewis, and Lewis is infected with the virus, so he ends up killing himself in the most brutal fucking cool kill of the movie. It's so shocking, and it happens like 20 minutes in this 2-hour movie, and it's probably the most notable thing that sticks with you in this movie. And yeah, he just really fucks his shit up, and you can tell why she's traumatized. At first I thought he was just gonna like choke to death, because it's been a while since I've seen The Smile, the first one. And I was like, well, as bad as it would to see someone that you kind of see as a friend choke to death, that wouldn't be really that traumatizing, right? And then he just fucking beats the shit out of his own face with a weight. And you're like, oh, yeah, it makes sense why she's traumatized. Um, it's fucking crazy. I thought, For a while though, with Sky, I felt like, yeah, she has a bit of a shitty life. She's dealing with some trauma, but most of her trauma is from before this happened. And then we end up meeting Morris, and, apparently she's had it for 3 days now, but she really hasn't been through that much. The girl in the first movie was going through hell. Her boyfriend wouldn't believe her. She killed her own cat, being controlled by the demon entity. There was just a lot going on in her life. She was cut off from her friends and family. She was trying to go to therapy, and there's all kinds of crazy shit. And you're like, well, how can this compare to what the girl went through in the first movie when nothing's really bad happened to her? Hell, she hasn't even figured out the whole virus thing, the demon entity thing. But the girl in the first movie, she had a bit of an advantage. She was able to find it out pretty quickly too. But then eventually, they just kind of tear you to shreds with all these crazy fucking plot twists. That one of them I kind of saw coming, but not really. With her friend Gemma, she has this friend Gemma. Apparently, had a falling out, and they haven't talked in a year. Well, pretty early on in the movie, she calls her and they reconnect again. She leaves a voicemail, is like, hey, can we be friends again? I really need to see you. And instantly gets a call back, which I thought was like a red flag. Because if you haven't talked to a friend in a year, why would she just call you back instantly and say she's going to come over in 45 minutes? I thought that was kind of crazy because I've had fallen out with friends before, and that just did not seem right to me. And then the other thing that I found weird was that her mom, Elizabeth, was always the one pushing to get her to be friends again with Gemma. And then when she was friends with Gemma again, and there was a scene where the mom came to the apartment and Gemma and Sky were hanging out, she doesn't say anything to Gemma. I found that weird. But I did not predict the fact that she was gonna be a hallucination. I thought she might be, but I can't lie and say that I predicted it. I just had a bad vibe about her. So yeah, anyway, it turns out that the 3 days she's been hanging out with her best friend again, none of it's been true. Gemma hasn't been here this whole time, which is just insane. And then the entity makes her kill her own mom. But then that turns out to not be true either. The mom's still alive. But that is just so insane. She goes through so much, and she does genuinely believe for a little bit that she killed her own mom. And then when her mom actually turns out to still be alive, she is already about to be killed. She doesn't even get to take in the fact that her mom is actually alive. And the entity decides to kill her on stage in front of a crowd. So now everybody in the crowd's probably traumatized. And they're all going to be possessed by the demon entity, which is just crazy. And I think that's such a fucking cool ending. This movie had a lot of scary shit happen in it. I thought more often than not, the effects looked kind of corny. Some of them look really good. A lot of them don't. I've never been a huge fan of the smiling effect. It's not the worst smiling effect you've ever seen in a movie, obviously. Even though I still haven't watched it yet. That movie that came out years ago, Truth or Dare, that I saw the trailer for. The smiling in that does not look great. But yeah, anyways, it's just, I thought the corniest part, it literally made me laugh, was the scene where she's in bed with Gemma and Gemma starts like smiling with like car lights and stuff. It was so fucking cheesy. That's not scary, that's funny. But I thought there was a lot of good in this movie. I thought it was better than the first one. And I overall really enjoyed it. It does make me wonder, because this entity has the potential to have been going around for thousands of years. Is this the first time it's ever traumatized a bunch of people? Why hasn't it ever traumatized a bunch of people before? What, like, why has that never happened? Because once they're in control of the body, why don't they, like, traumatize a bunch of people? Why do they only traumatize one? And, they decide to traumatize a bunch of people in this movie. Like, I wonder if in the past there was a time where, for example, maybe the entity decided to kill itself in front of not one, but at least two people. And then now those two people are stuck with the entity. Has there been one with three, four? Has there been one with hundreds before? If so, like, how did it end up breaking back to just one? This is probably the first time it's ever been multiple people, which is crazy to think about. Like, why did it never do that before? Has it really never gotten a celebrity before? Because who knows how long it's been going on. It's been going on for a little bit in the first movie, but who knows how far it could trace back to. Could trace back to, before cameras were a big thing that could record this shit and have, evidence building up. Overall, I thought this movie was really good, and I'm glad I finally watched it. I was gonna go see it in theaters, and then I never did. That happens with some movies. I ended up being like, oh yeah, Smile 2's out. I want to go see it in theaters, and it had already been taken out of theaters. So I'm glad I finally got to watch it. Great movie.